Welcome back to the Bigwater Podcast. We've got a little bit different deal. We've done some of these round tables and things before. We've got two captains of probably even longer than me, because they're a little older than me, I think, but we won't go there. We've got Jake Dunphy and Don Huntley from the Northern Ohio area. And these guys are grizzled captains that have some stories. They've done a few things as captains and things. We'll let them kind of tell you their background a little bit, but I want to thank you guys for joining the Bigwater Podcast and making some time. Good to see you guys. It's I always think of like when you're talking with people that are like, I'll call you guys watermen, right? Like you make your livings, on the water, doing various things and what have you, kind of like me, just in a different way. And when you've done anything long enough and you're dealing with the public, you're going to see some things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So why don't you both give us a little rundown of kind of some of what you do so these guys understand? And
I'm like Ross said, my name's Don Huntley. I've been a captain since 1996. Started with Newman Boat Line with them, worked until they closed in 2001. And then I went to Kelly's Island Ferry Boat Line in fall or spring of 2002 and been with them ever since. And I worked for Towboat Marine out of Sandusky as well. I help them out on occasion, kind of a utility infielder. I just go wherever they need me. If pull a trailer, take a salvage trailer, do whatever it's needed of me. But Jake and I do cross paths on occasion.
What about your real job?
Oh, my real job, I forget. Yeah, my real job, I work for Marysville Marine Distributors. We sell parts to the marinas in the area. So I've been involved with the marine industry since actually I've been like 22 or 23 years old, and it's been part of my life. But what's funny is when I was finishing my 4-year college degree at Bowling Green State University, I had no idea I wanted to be a boat captain.
Yeah, I mean, I originally met you when you were at another marina back in the day. They're kind of doing your back and forth thing. I think that's what watermen do, right? They don't do. There's always a little bit of multiple things going on. So, Jake, how about you?
Yeah, so I grew up down in Central Ohio and Delaware, Ohio. But my family, we spent our summers here near Marblehead and Lakeside. And in 1992, I started deckhanding on the towboats for Neil Schrock and dispatching and kind of being an all-around gopher when I was just in high school. And worked my way up through the ranks with him. The company back then was called Boaters Emergency Service. And got certified to scuba dive. I got my captain's license in 1997. And then in 2001, right after I graduated from Baldwin Wallace College in Cleveland, I purchased his business and merged a couple other towing firms together and joined forces with Towboat US in 2005. And then in 2012, we got in the marina business. So my wife and 2 kids and I live here in Marblehead and still very active towing and salvaging boats. We also do, dock rental and heated storage and outside storage here at Schrock's Marina. That's the marina my wife and I own. And besides working on the water, we also, as a family, do a lot of boating on the water. My kids love to fish. They also sail competitively, and we like to travel and stay on our boat and go to the islands.
Through this summer.
Yeah. So that's kind of my background, and we do some marine contracting and design and permitting as well. So kind of got a full service thing here and a bar.
Water people. You're water people. Watermen.
Right? Everything's on the water. You're right.
Well, when Jake and I met, it had to be, and this is kind of a funny story.
Spring of 2000?
You were on your prom or homecoming on
it was a college formal.
Oh, it was a college formal on the Emerald Empress, which was a big cruise boat that ran out of Sandusky for Newman Boat Line. And I was called to the pilot house by the owner, John Newman, to give this young redheaded kid a tour of the boat because he was working for Neil at Schrock's, and it was, that's that's got to be what, 98, 97?
So it was either 98 or 99.
Somewhere in there.
It was in the springtime, yeah.
You just like gingers.
So, yeah.
Well, that's what my wife is. I'm kind of fond of them.
Yeah.
I'm partial to them.
But and then I came and rode with you on the ferry boat sometimes when you and Brian and them. So
I've got one.
5 years
at least.
I've got a story that I'm wondering, Jake, if you could give me a little bit, because you don't even know directly about this, but probably I'm really bad with time, but I'm betting it's been at least 6 or 7 years ago. We were way north of Kelly's, and they had a couple guys that followed me out, and it was really rough. It was one of those days it's like, probably not the smartest thing to do or whatever. And a couple out of towners, and literally they set up on top of me, and we were just kind of drifting down. And I told my guys, like, hey, one of these guys is going to get close to us. Let me know, and so I can try to maneuver if we can. And I said to the guy, I was like, well, where's that other boat? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, hey, there's a tree. Well, I don't know if this is bringing back any memories yet, but the guy, he sunk, like the boat was like submerged. I don't know, whatever the technical term may be. You guys can go there, and it was one of your towboats that came in, and like, when it's really serious, I want to say it was the very end of April, early May, when, they don't go to hook the boat up. They're pulling people out of the water. Like your guy was like, because they even beat the Coast Guard there. And it was one of those, I say funny because it's obviously not funny, but it was one of those, you watch the other boat came in, and when the Coast Guard eventually got there, he was yelling at the guy to get out because he's basically, quote, driving through the scene. And he's trying to, net this guy's tackle and stuff. And they were still trying to find out and yelling how many guys were in the water. And it was one of those, I don't think they got that boat for another couple days, because I remember how it had drifted, because it was literally just inches out of the water. And they took it back to Kelly's. It was a toughie, exactly. And they took it back to West Bay, and they had it slung up, and they couldn't get it out. Got really equipped for that, or whatever they have over it.
That was an older, bass boat style boat. And I think toughies are definitely at the entry level end of bass boats, and it was meant for inland water. And the only cleats on that boat were plastic, and they were just screwed down. So it really couldn't have even been tied to a dock well, let alone trying to right it or flip it. The bow eye pulled out. We had nothing to hook onto, and it was rough. So we knew we couldn't make the passage to mainland where the trailer was. So yeah, we ended up using some machinery at the West Bay that they were kind to help us with, and got that poor boat. It had everything flushed out to being towed from, I think we were up west of Gull Island Shoal. And so we had already brought it maybe 3 or 4 miles into West Bay upside down. So that was an unfortunate situation. But a lot of fishermen get excited to go out and get excited about the fishing details, but they forget that they're also boating, and they need to watch the weather and watch their boat and know those things well.
There was probably a whole video's worth of should have, could have, would have, and redo this, do differently, right? But yeah, you got a heck of a memory. Of all the things, I know you weren't on the boat that day, were you, for the recovery?
I was there on the bigger boat, yeah.
Oh, were you? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just, as many hundreds of whatever that you do of these recoveries, I just wonder how many of those things you actually remember. You got a heck of a good memory.
Some of them stand out, and I can think of ones from 25 years ago or something in the 90s when I was just working here, and I remember them vividly. And there's other jobs from 2 years ago that Donnie might bring up, and I would have to think about it to recall. It just depends,
It's different. You never remember what call that you can remember. There are obviously ones that stick out in your mind, but I think it's when you think about them, you think about the people don't realize the danger that we are actually in when we go out there to do those recoveries. This time of the year when it's cold, I have my survival suit that I use ice fishing in my truck in case I'm 51 years old. If I go in the water, I've got 2 to 3 minutes. And I always joke around and say, well, at least I've got orange and black on that my wife can find me. And she doesn't like when I say that, but that's what it is. We're out there in cold water. You go out real early, doing a lot of early fishing or ice fishing. And as well as I do, we don't think it's dangerous, but we know it's dangerous in the back of our mind, and we're prepared for it.
Oh, 100%. I've been involved. I seem to almost be like a magnet for some of these things, just like that one we just mentioned, where it's kind of crazy. Everything's fine until it's not. And then are you prepared, whether it's physically, mentally, or equipment wise, or have kind of the backup plan and stuff? Because even like that other boat, to my knowledge, never did call. I called Watercraft and the Coast Guard. And it's just like he was too busy picking up tackle or something. I don't know what was going on there. But you said bring up, things that are memorable, because I'm the same way with fishing trips. Like I can remember sometimes like, hey, we caught this many with this guy 6-7 years ago. And then I'm like, breakfast? What was huh? Or, can't remember the code to punch into a Netflix or something. So give me one of your memorable ones, Don.
I mean, towing wise, I guess probably this is a long time ago, and I was still at Lakeside Marine. I got a call from, at that time it was Lake Erie Towing, and we were owned by a gentleman by the name of Kenji Saunders. And they said, hey, we've got a big boat up on Gull Island Shoal sitting, and you've been up there, Ross. You know how the rocks are and the boulders are. The boat was literally pinballing through the rock. It was a ground, but it was, as we call it, lively. So it's moving around on the rocks. And Jim Kennedy, who owns Towboat Marine now, said, you got to get up there and lay your eyes on this because I can't get there right now. I'm on my way, but you can beat me. My mom was from Kelly's Island, and we had a home over there. I literally ran up there in a 3 to 5 northeaster, and I wouldn't remember this, but my back today, when I go to the chiropractor once a month, I ran up there an 11-foot Boston Whaler called the Northeastern with a 9.9 Yamaha on it. And that's how we got all the equipment to the boat, because you know how shallow it is. We couldn't get a towboat in there. It was holed. We had to get pumps in there. We had to do all kinds of stuff just to get the boat secured. And I remember passing a 26-foot lineman that was running along, just putzing along, probably 2,600 RPM. And I'm jumping out of the water in an 11-footer going, what am I doing? And I was probably, that's got to be 20 years ago. It was probably like, in fact, I can remember it was 2000.
You had hair back then.
Yeah, I had a lot of hair back then. I had hair, only a couple kids. Now I have 4 children, a grandson, and no hair.
We
had a little kick out there.
Okay. I think you asked how many calls we do in a year. So
how many
recoveries? Both the Sandusky company and us are doing, probably combined around 1,000 a year.
Yeah, somewhere
maybe 1,200.
That's a lot.
That's
a lot. Well, I mean, you got to have some craziness in it. I know one that I saw that you guys, I'm sure, were involved with off of like Buckeye there with a giant boat. Was that like a couple of years ago? Do you remember that one?
We've had a couple in the 40-foot range on Buckeye. Yeah.
Well, for people that are listening to this that have no idea where that is, on Lake Erie, there's a little finger that's like almost like an old roadbed or submerged deal that goes out to a tiny little island off South Bass. And when the weather really, we had that, I don't know what you want to call it, that super deal where the water was down 13, 14 feet or whatever it was at one point. I don't know if you guys, I was actually over there, and you could walk from that island from South Bass, and the amount of props and lower units that were exposed out there they were laying all over the place. I got a picture of that somewhere.
Brian Kolar had a good picture that pops up on Facebook all the time. It was a Alpha 1 Generation 2 outdrive, and it was just sitting there frozen in the ice.
Yeah.
And we know shortcuts to go through there. You line up the Golden Dome with certain things, and I'm not going to tell people how to do it, but there's a lot of people that cut through there that have no idea that they're only in 2 to 3 feet of water.
Well, and
they make it.
And I think thing too is, again, if most of the people listening to this probably are not, on Lake Erie or don't even maybe know exactly where that's at, most likely. But again, the water levels go up and down so much that just because you went through there last year doesn't mean you can, or even today. Like today we had water blowing in, and the marina that I went out of, we probably had an extra couple feet of water because of the wind direction. Where tomorrow you'd be dragging some skags in there, so all that good stuff. But yeah, that one I was thinking about, they had to put like airbags in because that boat was like stuck, and they had a big hole in it, and it was there for a while. Like
just standard operating procedure. I mean, that could be one of 10 in the summer between the two companies. I mean, it's you never know. I mean, we're prepared to do anything. I mean, all the boats have airbags in them. They have scuba tanks in them. Jake could be in the water. I could be in the water. Jim Kennedy could be in the water. Jason, our other captain, could be in the water. You never know. I mean, you have no idea. And that's what you can be on your way to go get fuel to Cedar Point for us in Sandusky Bay, going to run to get fuel. And 2 minutes later, we're north of Huron with a boat that's flipped upside down and people in the water. And it's just because we're so mobile and we're usually on the water in the summertime that we're actually able to respond. Like you said, we're usually first on scene a lot of times. And that can be very scary and actually very scary.
Well, I got one for you that I don't think you guys were initially involved in, but I was on the Miller Ferry. It's probably at least 5 or 6 years ago. And I was watching us divert, and I'm like, and I knew the captain on the boat, and I see him shut the shades, and I'm like, and I'm watching us divert over, and I'm like, and then I see the ferry coming back from either Middle Bass or whatever, and wandering, and I'm like, something's not going good here. I don't know if we're sinking, somebody else is sinking. And it turned out it was a big pleasure boat, and there was like maybe 8 or 9 people. And we came right up to it, and the boat was basically submerged, and there was people just kind of floating all over. But the Miller stopped, and they didn't get any closer. I don't know if that was because they didn't know how many people were in it, or I was kind of surprised.
Those people out of the water right under the bow of the ferry boat. You were on that ferry. That's crazy. Yep. That was a 26 rinker.
Yeah.
And they sunk on their way back from partying at Put and Bail weekend on a Sunday in probably June, like you said, 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it might be me. I might have a little black cloud or something. Boats sink around me.
Yeah, that's a good thing we don't know where you fish, because you stay underneath the dark anyway. So that way, if we're not near you, we're fine.
Yeah. I'm under the radar, no doubt.
You're going to hear them, and nobody knows where you're at, quote unquote.
I like to try to stay away, do my own thing if possible. But I mean, on that, like, that was an educational thing for me, because I'm watching these people, they weren't prepared. They didn't have life jackets ready, and they were like trying to stay on the boat. And I watched the guy get hung on a cleat with his life jacket. And it was like, I mean, he got beat up. Like, he physically got beat up as that boat was going down, and all the people were kind of going
rough.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. There was a bunch of people, and again, me judging, but it looked like maybe not super experienced situation, or maybe they had too much fun, or too many influences involved.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially with COVID, Ross. I mean, boats came out of the woodwork. I mean, the company I work for now, when I started in 2017 at Marysville, 2018, we had 48 employees. We have 122 employees now as of today in 2024. We've doubled in size of business, and the boating industry in this area has just exploded. And unfortunately, a lot of people got into boating. They had extra money. You had a social distance. Campers and state parks were, booming, and being out here.
You don't have to tell me anything. Whether it was pleasure boaters or fishermen, it made for some interesting situations. But so I know you probably don't know exactly, but being involved with that, what was the reasoning like with the Miller? I was kind of surprised that we stayed off and didn't even throw life rings or anything. And I don't think it was like anybody was in. They were flipping out. They were super nervous.
Life jackets on in the water. The problem was it was like 4-footers, like sharp 4-footers, and getting human beings on the Miller Ferry and 4-footers is pretty difficult and very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I was right there. I think Brian was the captain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that Brian Washke? And
you got a good memory.
And he did a great job. And he and I were in communication over the marine radio. He sat right there, kind of helped make a lee for me, and he had a good vantage point looking down on everyone, because I knew that I was going to have to, grab a person or two, turn around, keep myself in a good position. It's very difficult to boat around people in the water. Those propellers plus legs don't get along well.
And people don't realize, they're just panicked. They want out of the water. They don't realize that we're trying to maneuver the boat, especially on the ferry boat side. And I've had a couple situations, or one that I can think of, when you come up to it, especially at nighttime. I had one similar situation off the northeast side of the lighthouse, and it was a cigarette boat. I never heard why it sank, but we saw flares, and the Shirley Irene and myself, I was on the Kayla Marie, and we came out, and as we're coming to that, and you're trying to control the boat, you've got a 130-foot boat, it's dark, and your depth perception changes at nighttime. And I came up on this boat, and the next thing I know, I'm in a debris field, and you couldn't tell whether or not it was a human or whatever. So then you have to back off, analyze the situation. And the next thing I know, Marblehead, the towing companies, I'm sure you guys were there. I know Sandusky was there. They come flying in. And at that point, the boat's so big, and you're 3 to 4 feet out of the water. And like Jake said, that day, that was really rough. It was, and you know how it is in the south. I call it the South Pass slop shoot.
Slop shoot. That's the names. The slop shoot, no doubt.
Right in between, Mouse and there, and it builds up, and it's just a washboard in there. And you got to hold that boat still. And if you don't have the wind right, you can lose the bow, you can lose the stern, and then you can cause more problems. And having them right there was key to that whole situation.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at how fast, like you said, I know you guys are out there, but it's how fast that some of those guys get back on there. But it always seems like, obviously the ferry boats that they're making those continual trips around. I mean, who was the, remember, was it the Good Time, like that lost steering or something a year or two ago?
In September. So that's just 6 or 8 months ago. Yep.
Yeah. How did that all end up working out?
I missed out on the best fun of all. My wife took me to a concert, and I'm getting yelled at to try to get one of the ferry boats running because we were trying to figure out. I'm like, I'm on my way to Cleveland, and if I could have, I would have turned around and come back in a heartbeat for that. But
must have not have been a very good concert.
It was my kids. It was a long story. A friend hooked me up with a loge, and
oh, nice.
It was.
I'd rather gone to the concert that day.
Yeah, it was.
I was happy to be able to help, but it was stressful and rough. And
yeah, I mean,
whatever happened there? Did they? I don't remember what happened. I mean, they lost steering, but they didn't have to offload anybody or anything, did they?
No, it was really rough, and they could kind of do circles or kind of stay where they were. And I was able to charter a tugboat out of Sandusky. And once we got an engineer and a deckhand, because I have my tug license too, and a couple of Jimmer Kennedy's crew from Sandusky, we took what we got the tug already, got with 6 people, because we're going to get a ferry in rough conditions. It's not going to be safe or easy to hook up to them, and there's 200 and some people on board. So we had a lot of contingencies and what ifs to plan for, but we took plenty of very skilled people, and we were able to get everyone safely off the water in a couple hours, and that was what was the most important part.
And I'll tell you the one thing that impressed me the most about that, and I saw the videos online, and I was not there, but when you guys went in the bay, and I've been in Sandusky Bay going in the channel in 12 to 14 footers in a car ferry before, only a couple times, and it was probably 6 to 8s,
Mm-hmm.
7 to 10s maybe, and they have that ferry boat on a long tow, and people don't realize you're praying, and I know you powered her up to keep her from
keep the tow line from breaking.
From keeping the tow line, you have to make a decision: do you slow down or not? And it's like flipping a coin. And these guys did, I mean, unbelievable job. I mean,
the last thing you want to do when you're scared is speed up.
Yeah.
But that's sometimes but when you've got for a while there, the 120-foot ferry would surge on the tow line, and we didn't want anything to part while we were going along the Cedar Point jetty. So.
Yeah, because if the line would have broke, it's over.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing.
And you're right by the rocks in rough water, with
that's for people. Yeah, for people that don't know, it's a pretty tight channel and very shallow water outside of it. In Sandusky Bay on Lake Erie, it's not. When you think of bay, you think of shelter, but Sandusky Bay gets pretty naughty because it's so shallow and it's so big, and it kind of lines up there where the wind comes right down the pipe, right?
Tow line that was 3.5 inches in diameter.
3.5 inches.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really, really heavy when it gets wet.
I would imagine that's heavy anytime. I mean, God, you'd have to be way tougher than Don to even haul that thing around.
Wait a minute here now. Newman days, we threw lines like Miller's throw lines.
That was a long time ago, Don.
Well,
that's a long time ago.
Lines, and
and
the jet, they throw lines. And when you're coming into a dock and that line's wet, and you've got cars in between you and the bulwarks or the side of the boat, and you're trying to throw a line, and it's all shoulders and arms. I mean, I didn't play football, but they thought I tore my rotator cuff, and the doctor's like, "Did you play football?" I'm like, "Nope, not me." I said, "I was a runner." Can't tell it now. But anyways, you have to be skilled when throwing those lines. They're heavy. They're twice as wet.
Well, you ain't throwing a 3.5 inch line very far, are you?
We were throwing 2s and 2 1/4s when we worked for Newman's, because we used to back in on the line. It's called the Carly Emily now, but at the time it was called the Endeavor, and we threw 2 lines every time going into Kelly's. And when the line we were back in on was 2 inches, and the front line we threw was 1.5 inches. And they're 90 foot long. You're throwing probably 30 feet at a crack when you're probably not that much. Probably 15 to 18 feet when you coil it in your one hand and throw it. I mean, it wasn't nothing to hit a 20-foot shot, and you had to, because you were coming in, especially going into Marblehead. Whew, that was not fun.
So what is the number one reason that people get towed? Like, obviously with a lot of boating things, if somebody said to me like, hey, what could we do to avoid a charter going south? It's like, well, don't drink, right? Like that.
Not enough people buy water pump impellers from Donnie Huntley. That's
right.
what I'm going to say.
I
would say tied for first place. I'm just guessing. I'm sure I could look at it any month and it would go one or the other. But
really, an impeller?
Water overheats and dead batteries. Yep.
Yeah. And
dead batteries.
In the fall, when people are in these shallow, harbors around Catawba and in Sandusky Bay, they don't use the boats a lot. Then their out drives load up with zebra mussels. They get up inside the water passages, clog things up. And they're like, it idles fine, but as soon as I power it up, it overheats. And it's like you're full of zebra mussels. And it's just things that you have to maintain. And you've been around long enough, Ross, too, and Jake and I have seen it. We're going into a low water period. We've had water high for the last 7 years. Probably in the next 5 to 7 years.
It's going to go a lot lower.
It's going to go a lot lower. I remember it was like 10, 11, when I was at Marine Max. I mean, we were playing inches on the chart datum to get boats in and out of West Harbor because it was so shallow, big ones, 50, 60 footers. And we were dragging silt going into the harbor. And we're coming back to that.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. I was going to say one maintenance item, because good maintenance is the best safety and the best insurance on your boat. And 2 items that we tell our customers here at the marina is to replace your water pump impellers every 3 years and replace your batteries every 3 years and replace them all at the same time. Everybody, that port battery's getting low, I'm going to change it. Well, yeah, then all the other 3 that are also 5 years old are starting to suck your new $120 battery down.
120.
Or yeah, that's cheap. Yeah, $200, $300 battery. But so those are 2 big things. And if you change all your batteries at the same time every 3 years, and maybe on a 1 year interval from that, change your impellers. I mean, most boats have one, but some boats have lots of them. If you have multiple engines or generator or anything like that. But those are 2 huge things you can do right off the bat to eliminate trouble.
And I think too, it's important. They got to remember they don't want to do it. But when I was a service manager, people would look at me and I give them this estimate. And they're like, we're not doing all that work and this and that. And I'd be like, look, don't you dare call me on 4th of July that you've got 20 family members in town. You're ruining my life. The wife's cussing me out. And, you're ruining my summer. You're a horrible person. And you didn't change the impeller, and I can tell you at least 24 times that happened. And it's routine maintenance, getting on the boat. And I'm sure a lot of the guys that are doing, watching this podcast are real knowledgeable on, following their maintenance and stuff like that. But it is key. It is the number one key thing to make sure that your boats are maintained. And
I don't know that people are, to be honest with you. And I know a lot of dealers too that aren't, you'd think dealers, because obviously it's financially beneficial. Sometimes they're not so good at that either.
Well, I think on that side of it, the problem you run into is you've got the sales side of it and you've got the service side of it. And the sales side of it, when buying a boat, is minimal of what's going on. That's the small part of it. The second key part, and you're right, Ross, they don't do a good job where a service department comes in. Look, I sold you the boat. It's time now. Jake is your storage guy. See him. These are the things you want to do every year, every 2 years. When you look at your manual, it says, hey, every 100 hours or every year or every 200 hours, every 2 to 3 years, do it like this. Up here on the Great Lakes, we don't fall into that. We fall into seasonal. We're every year. We'll never hit those hour numbers. Now, if we're fishing like, as a professional or a charter boat captain, yes, you're hitting those numbers. So you want to follow those hours religiously. And you can talk to anybody, Chris Hammond, other mechanics around the area. If you stay up on your maintenance, you're going to be on the water a lot longer than if you don't.
And a few other things I like to have everyone evaluate often. Sit down with your insurance agent, evaluate your insurance policy.
Oh, yeah.
We see a lot of good boaters who get into a bad situation, whether or not it's their fault, but it turns really bad because they have, subpar, crappy boat insurance. There's a lot of it out there.
And you have to ask that question. And that's on the tow side, the service side, from my side.
Yep.
Ask them, if I sink my boat, what am I covered for? And I'll give you a personal example. About I still had my lineman after my father passed away, and my cousin worked for Nemechek in Port Clinton. She calls me yelling at me 2 to 3 years into it, because when I took the boat over, the insurance, I just said, just put the same insurance on it my dad had. My dad always told me have the best insurance, so I never questioned it. I never read the policy. I didn't have I had liability. I didn't have casualty coverage. So if I would have sunk the boat, had to call Jake or whatever, it's on me. I didn't know it, and shame on me. And I've been doing this for 25 years, and I didn't read the policy. And when I got my new policy through Geico, I'm like, okay, if I sink, if I do this, if I do that, because I have a new center console or a new to me center console that I'm trolling with, I want to know I'm covered. I've got my towing insurance, I got everything there, and it's very important.
And that's a really good point. And without getting too into the weeds on it, it's like, obviously what I do is a little bit different, and most of those companies like a Progressive or Geico just wouldn't offer what I personally need. Now that probably doesn't apply to a lot of people listening to this, but I think it is surprising though what people need to, because I think a lot of people that do listen to this where they maybe don't understand is if you're fishing tournaments, you're taking some other people, there's some different things that if, like you said, you read those policies. Even I can tell you just personally, like Progressive and a couple of those companies used to do more for guys that fish tournaments or some other things, and now they don't. Or like part-time captains, they used to offer some type of commercial liability or what have you. And again, I'm not here to get in the middle of the insurance game or name companies, but a lot of those that did that no longer do it. And again, in the weeds and not going down a road we probably need to go. But a lot of that is because
liability when you're a charter boat, when you got a paid passenger on board. And that's covering the crew too, because, workers' comp doesn't cover you when you're working on a boat. So commercial boat insurance is also the workers' comp coverage for the captain and crew.
Yeah.
So that's how that
the boat insurance.
It's called Jones Act. Mm-hmm. Another thing I was going to mention when we were kind of talking about safety, some fishermen anchor a lot, especially the perch fishing. Some don't anchor at all. It's a good idea to anchor periodically to make sure that your anchor tackle is all in good shape and to make sure that practice is fresh in your mind. Because when something bad happens, oftentimes the last thing people think about is dropping the anchor, but oftentimes it's the first thing they need to think about.
And practice those things.
And practice, because you need to know how much line to get down and get that anchor to hold. Because a lot of times people break down very near a lee shore, meaning a shore that's to their leeward or downwind of them. And if you don't get your anchor down right now, you're on the rocks. So what went from a $40 water pump impeller that needed changed or an ignition module, now you've got your boat on the rocks and you need more complex service from the towboat guys and probably for your boat. So anchoring is super, super, super important to anchor from the bow and have enough line down for your water depth and your weather conditions. Because everything else will fall into place if the boat's not washed up on the rocks.
And that's all good stuff. But let's be honest. We got you two guys here because you've been there, done that. And, Don, one of your buddies might have given me a little thing and said something about the Golden Rivet Club. I don't know what that means, but I know that, like, if you've watched any of our other stuff, the guys that saw the squirrel pillow, if you haven't seen that podcast, go check it out, Jeremy Smith. And that was like a squirrel pillow. You have to listen to find that out. But what is this whole Golden Rivet Club?
That goes back to, it started before I even started at the boat. It was just actually the boat still has it. It's now the Juliet Alicia, which was the old Kelly Islander. And we have a golden rivet down in the engine room. And
literally.
Story goes, you got to grease the relative bearing and all that other stuff you can use a lot of nautical terms that have maybe a little bit of a sexual connotation to it. And the Golden Rivet Club is, and anybody can get a clothing, could get a shirt or whatever, but to be a member of it, you had to have carnal knowledge of maybe some interactions with a female, or if you're a female crew, a male, on board the boat while underway or at dock.
See, now you're starting to talk to our childish inner human beings here, because we love insurance talk. We love all this stuff, but I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. These are not things that people tune in for because they know I'm a dumpster fire. Like, they want to hear the Golden Rivet stuff. I mean, like I remember back when we had that the Kid Rock concert. It's always just funny to me where Uncle Cracker, and we won't name names, but somebody that might own a ferry service there let Uncle Cracker know that he needed to act like a decent human being or he was going to be kicked off the boat. You guys have to have had some crazy interactions with different people,
there's all kinds of, whether they're famous or not famous. We've had people having sex on the boat. You catch them. And I get it. I go to Florida and I forget I'm on, you go on vacation and we always joke and say they check their brain out on the, at the mainland when they got on board, and they forget that there's policemen on the island. There's firemen over there to do their EMTs, and people just start, fooling around. I mean, we've had, let me think. We've had to go to cars, knock on the window. They might be taking an afternooner to, before the ferry boat, didn't realize the boat came in. They get out in their underwear, load the car up, and they get back in to finish up while going across down the lake. We've had, one of the notes I might have shot you off, we had a saying was he was pointed north and she was headed south. And, you're on the boat. And that was on a derby day. When I first started in 95, I wasn't a captain. And this lady's like, hey, guys, can you stop the porno going on outside? And this girl was very attractive and had a very small skirt on, and it was time to go. So she was, and that happens. I get it. I was young once in my day too. Still think I'm young.
It was a long time ago.
Long time ago. That was hair down time ago.
Son ago, and but there's a lot of things. I mean, I got to meet Barry Sanders one time on the ferry boat. He
seems like he. I don't think anybody has a bad Barry Sanders stories. He seems like one of the most stand-up guys.
He was super nice. And one of the other things, I didn't mention this, but I've been doing local football and basketball games for a local radio station, WLEC, and Coast Country for almost 20 years. And you get to meet some famous people, and they just want to be normal people. When they're up here, they don't want to be bugged. And to be honest, the trick to getting to know a famous person is don't treat them like a famous person. And we're in the pilot house, and one of the crew was an avid football player, and he is freaking out. He goes, hey, man, I think Barry Sanders is in the cabin back there. And the way the pilot house is set up on the Juliet Alicia, you're standing there at the wheel, and you can turn around and see the entire cabin. It's not like the Miller boats where, you're blocked and you're in your little cube. And I'm like, no, it's not. He stood up and looked out the window, and his calves were probably that big around. I'm like, and he was small. Barry Sanders, I think, is only like 5'7", 5'8". And when I look down to somebody, they're small. So we're like, and people started realizing it, and they started bugging him. So of course we invited him into the pilot house, had him sign the log. Really super nice guy. But you get to meet people up here, and I'm sure you might have had some celebrities, that have chartered with you, or some, might have known some people that have, and they just want to be normal people up here, and it's fun. We live in a great area.
I think it's like anything else. I've had a lot of professional athletes and different entertainers and things. And, I think it's just like anything else. I would say half of them are great people and the other half are like kind of dipshits, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. But I mean, that's par for the course, right? Yeah. But yeah, a lot of, like you said, a lot of those guys, like, like they've got a lot of athletes, and whatever it is, baseball or football, generally those guys, like, this is their release from that. Like you said, whether this is like going to the Keys for them, or maybe it's a family trip north because they're originally from here, married somebody, and they don't want to talk about football or baseball or whatever. This is their getaway from that. Like, that's super competitive, and it's, edgy stuff, and they want to do something different. So I definitely agree. What do you think Barry Sanders was doing over there? Kelly's Island, Barry Sanders, that just seems like a little bit of an odd fit.
He had his wife with him, and
he was probably visiting Governor Celeste.
Yeah, he might have been. I mean, we've had some famous people. Governor Celeste had a house on the island, but I think he's just trying to come out and and enjoy the area. I mean, I don't think people realize how many. I don't want to say famous, but I guess they're famous. But you know what I mean? Influential people that are in our area that you could just walk by and not know. I mean, Keith Diebler. His son's now the basketball coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he lives right down the street, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I mean, super nice people, great Ohio basketball coach, and now
I actually saw him at Kelly's. He was sitting next to us when we were eating at a restaurant there in the South Side.
3 years ago, there was a wedding on Put-in-Bay, and the bride and groom decided they wanted to have a really, really fun weekend for everyone who attended their wedding. So they hired Tone Loke and Joan Jett and Brett Michaels to play all the different events of their wedding. Tone Loke went over and stayed the whole weekend, but I got to haul Brett Michaels and his crew over and back to Put-in-Bay, and then the next day, Joan Jett.
You know, I actually went to the Tone Loke and the Vanilla Ice deal that they had at the boathouse there. That was
like the next year, I think. Yep.
That was a hoot. They were.
I was a senior in high school when Ice Ice Baby was #1, and I had it on my single-sided cassette player in my 1991 Escort L.
None of that surprises me. None of that surprises me.
I was cool.
I'll tell you what, a lot of people were surprised I just kind of did it to do it, and the people that I was there with were actually they thought it was great. He was a good entertainer. You know, he knew how to work the crowd there a bit. Even if you weren't into his music, he was doing it up. But you know, as captains, kind of like backing out of this a little bit, I just think, you know, like I have something called a TWIC card, like most of us, you know, do, even though I don't think we had to renew that. But pre 9/11, so this TWIC card is basically like a hazardous harbor, for lack of a fancy word, and we had to have that as a captain. But I'm sure some of your guys had to have that as well, right? But so now, like pre 9/11,
you have to have them still. So because the ferry dock, well, some of the ferry docks and like the tugboat docks, they're all secure facilities. So you have to have them if you work out of those. But if you're, you know, running a charter boat out of a regular marina, those aren't MARSEC controlled facilities.
I mean, when you're driving the ferry there in Kelly's Island, because I watch the boats, you know, I'm going over there just as my own recreational stuff, a little getaway thing or whatever too, all the time. And you watch these guys that are trolling, casting, drifting, I don't care. And you're like, obviously I think they know they don't have the right of way. I think they think you're going to move out of the way because you can't, you can turn on a dime. Has there ever been a fishing boat that smoked one of the ferries going to Kelly's or any of the other ones? Do you know?
I mean, I can't say that. I can't say we haven't clipped boards. I mean, accidentally, you know, we're trying to maintain a schedule, which we're bound by law to maintain that schedule. If customers complain enough to department, that falls under Department of Transportation because of the way our schedules, you know, we're supposed to leave on the half hour, top of the hour, and people can complain. And being a dedicated ferry route, you know, you have fishing boats. When I come out of Marblehead, I do is I look up to the east and I'm looking for boats coming around the lighthouse. It could be a sailboat, could be a fishing boat. And I try to plan, can I get past them? Can I get around them? Do I need to duck them? Because it is my giveaway zone. Regardless that I'm on a 130, 170 foot car ferry, there's still right of ways. I'm not restricted. I am restricted by my maneuverability, but planned enough I can get around them. And by law, I don't have to deviate. Or I have to deviate for boats, and we'll go behind them. But when they get close to us, I mean, when you guys are running multiple boards, and obviously you're probably down 17, 18 feet, we really don't worry about it too much. But those little yellow offshore boards are hard to see. And if you're running multiple poles, I mean, you could have your spread, 7,500 foot off the boat?
Oh, more than that. Yeah. I mean, some of those guys that you can't even, they must need binoculars.
You throw a lead core line off the back end, straight off the back to try, you know, for a saint. Not that they're going to do it around here, but, you know, I've done that before where you're sending out 300-400 feet of line. We don't know.
I always thought it'd be neat if there could be like a referee for a pack of trollers. Because if there's 50 boats square mile, they will all head at each other. And
I'm in.
Northbound leg and then all head to the east. Then they could do their patterns, but they all head at each other. And
you are speaking my talk now. They are absolutely some just dipshits out there. I sometimes wonder if they just do it to do it. I mean, it's just counterproductive. I watched almost 2 boats hit the other day, physically hit, and they got all tangled up on top of it. It's like,
each other and
Ross, they don't realize that. And when you read the rule book, they talk about a trawling vessel. That is not a trolling vessel. That they are not restricted, or they're not. What's the term? We've all had it.
restricted their ability to maneuver.
I think you're overthinking it, Don. I don't think that those guys even misinterpret language. I think they just don't give a shit.
They don't. Well, it's no different. They're no different if you're casting and a guy comes up and short drifts you. what's the first thing you're doing? You're going to take your old egg sinker and you're trying to swing it as far as you can. Because I am one of those trollers. I am one of those casters that, I fall brawl, I fish, I'm trying to get into it. And there are people, they don't use common sense, but they have to understand that they're underway making way. And if they have a boat, as I always teach, because I teach for Power Squadron, been doing that for 20 years. But if you have a boat on your right, you're wrong. And I know there's angles and everything, but that's what I try to teach people, or newer boaters. If you have a boat on your right, you're wrong. And you have to give way. And it's no different if you've got 6 lines off the starboard side and 6 lines off the port side. If you've got a boat coming at you on the starboard, now at that point, there has to be some common sense between both boats. Okay, we're both screwed right now. We better figure out how the hell we're not going to hit.
I don't know if it's ignorance or what. Just the other day I had one where a guy I had the right of way, but I still, even if I do, I'll try to give so that like it just is easy on everybody.
Right.
I wish that was reciprocated a lot, but there was 4 guys in this little boat and they were both sitting down backwards and they just kept coming. They were just going Mach 10, for fishing speed. And I hit the horn. I'm yelling. It's calm enough. Never, ever did turn, never looked. I felt like you guys, it was the same thing. Like, what is going on here? I mean,
well, you just said the key thing, Ross. They were facing backwards. By law, they are breaking the law. They do not have a proper lookout. They're underway making way, and they do not have a proper lookout. Then if our friends at the ODNR come out there and tell them that, then they jump on and start the Facebook fight. That's what I love. The Facebook fight comes on. Who's right, who's wrong? And then the Facebook fog rolls in, and nobody has a effing clue.
I'm confused. I just want Church of Perch, because Church of Perch will set you straight.
Mike Bray's a great guy, Church of Perch. He's probably going to start texting me when he finds out I do this with you. But
Facebook fog. I'm going to use that one.
Now,
I like that.
Now, I cannot take proper terms. I was at a seminar this winter at South Shore, and the Grady White people put on a program called Facebook Fog. And to be honest, I enjoyed it greatly because I learned some things about fishing that, what is considered a caught fish? Meaning, is the hook in the mouth? Is it on the side of the mouth? Is it in the gill plate? What's snagged? Again, the Facebook fog can get a lot of people in trouble.
I spoke at one of those events at South Shore probably 3 or 4 years ago. Might have been longer than that now, but it's about 4 or 5 maybe. But so tell people, because that's a topic right now, especially with hair jigs and questionable hook sets and trolling with a head full of hooks on a husky jerk or something. What's the Don interpretation? Not that this is going to do anything besides get us in jail, but
I mean, my interpretation is you have to have a hook inside the mouth. I looked on Facebook last night, and guys, I've been watching pictures, and I mean, the ODNR could probably watch it, or DNR, I should say, holding up a fish, and the guy's got a great big lure across his mouth, and there's not one hook inside his lip. Now, could it have popped out? The guys at the seminar said, if it's questionable, throw it out. Get it out, get it overboard. If it's not in the mouth, it's not a caught fish.
Well, there's an awful lot of people taking pictures that get themselves, or deer hunting especially, like you see that, where guys get themselves into trouble by incriminating themselves. Fishing probably doesn't fall in as big, but
if we would have had these when I started running ferry boats, I'd be in jail. I'd be in jail. I mean, well, I guess it'd be, since I've been doing it 30 years, it's the statute of limitations are out. But I mean, the things that aren't, stuff that, back when we had Nextel chirp phones, we would take pictures and they were so grainy, it wouldn't be, Christ, you can see the hair on the back of a fly now when you take a picture of a camera out in the lake. And it's just, these things have ruined us. Everybody's posting pictures and doing this. And I think that's, one of the things with, everybody's got to be careful. They want everybody to know what they're doing, but they got to be careful of what they're posting when they do it.
Well, as they say, there's probably most of us guys there that lived a certain lifestyle for a certain amount of time, that the evidence that would have been there would have changed things a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So how is the rapid and early warm up of Lake Erie affecting the fishing? Is it helpful or just a little bit?
I've throughout history, I've got pushing 30 years of doing it and 25 as a full-time job ish. I would say that when you have a mild winter like this, it's not good for anything, even though you get these windows that like are a smoke and mirrors, if that makes sense. So yeah, I basically fished all winter. We had great fishing. There wasn't a lot of traffic early. There was not a lot of out-of-towners in March. We really did well.
That surprised me for as mild as it was.
Yeah, but then you pay for it, and it just seems like we always have a windier spring once we get that. And then again, I know we got plenty of fish and everything, but we generally have really crappy hatches according to the fisheries guys. So it just seems like I'd rather have a hard winter. It seems like all around we don't have the again, I'm not a biologist, but putting words in from other people's mouths, it's like when we have that deep freeze, it kills the big gizzard shad. It starts the life cycle around, whether it's the algae, all these things that we have that super cold water, and it's the big picture. Like that's how it's supposed to be. And when we don't have
I agree 100%. And I'm not a biologist.
I'm just a dumb boat captain, and
people are going to start complaining probably in the next 3 months about low water. Annually our water typically peaks between Memorial Day and Father's Day. So first, 3 weeks of June is when we hit our highest water levels of the year. After that, it can drop fast. So I bet my prediction is when the water starts to drop in August, we're all going to be hoping for an icy winter because we've had a lot of open winters and evaporated a lot lately.
And I just want fishing stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how much water actually evaporates, and we're not going to turn this into a biology or fisheries lesson, but I mean, a lot of water evaporates when we don't have ice.
Yeah.
And they didn't get snow up north, and they normally get, tons and tons of snow up north. So I think we'll feel it from that as well.
So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I wish we had a harder winter. I love ice fishing. We have mutual friends over on the islands there that we do some of that stuff with, and that would have been great. I like a change of pace, but fortunately we have a lot of fish in our system. That's why all these out-of-towners are coming here. And so even a bad day here, like today, we had a tougher day by my standards, but if I was to live pretty much anywhere else in the country and do what we did, it would be a win. And our field goals and our goalposts are moved compared to other people. How about that?
Oh yeah, my son lived in Montana for 2 years, and they would go walleye fishing, and if they got a 22-incher out there, they were ecstatic. And I'd be out fishing, and I'd send pictures. He'd be like, "Dad, are you fishing?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Send a picture of your cooler." We'd have 24, 26s, and these people are like, "What are those alligators?" I'm like, "That's what we do on Lake Erie." And people that don't come up here don't realize how special Lake Erie really is.
No, 100%. So Jake, give me one of your most memorable recoveries or towing, maybe a dumpster fire. Those are more fun too, but you have to have there's always one. Like you ask any captain, there's always something that sticks out of like, oh boy.
Probably one of the bigger jobs of my career was 3 years ago or so. There was a big hatteras that washed up on the shore on the west side of Middle Bass and sunk in several feet of water. And that was a 6-day ordeal getting that boat afloat and stabilized and back to mainland. So that was a big one. I'm trying to think of some other interesting. We had a boat with two families on board of little kids that went up for a boat ride to see the pelicans up around Big Chick, and they hit Little Chick and ripped their outdrive off. And before they realized they had a problem other than propulsion, they were all in their life jackets floating in the water in the middle of Canada. And
I can almost tell you right where they hit because I've almost done it myself. I've kind of had brain fog for a second because it's really easy to do there. It's just like anything else. I mean, you drive a car for 40 years and all of a sudden you just have a memory lapse for a second. You pull out in front of somebody and
it's all
good.
Yeah. So that's we want everyone to be safe and have fun.
Yeah, and it's funny. We talk about this all the time, and we'll be like, we want everybody. Yes, it's our job. When I'm towing, it's our job to take care of people, and it pays us, and sometimes it pays well. But at that same time, we'd rather not have that. I mean, that's not part of our. For me, mine is education, getting people out there and getting them on the water. Because when they get into a boat, their brains are going this fast. And we got to get their brain going this fast. And usually by the time it's there, they start to figure out, that it's like driving a car, but man, it takes a long time.
Yep.
So, I mean, do you think like, I mean, as an example with the fall brawl, I, you know, talking like I'm an old man, but before the fall brawl in the fall, and I would say even like especially pre social media, what it is now, there'd be 20, 30 guys in the central basin, you know, on an average October, November, and you knew everybody. There was not a whole lot of problems. We didn't have the launch facilities that we have now. You know, it just, you couldn't physically accommodate that much. And it was just seemed to be less problems. And now, you know, everybody, I've had literally people yell at me, you know, they're driving over on plane, you know, right in front of me, like wide open, like 50 feet in front of you. And they're like, I'm fishing the fall brawl. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with anything? And, you know, at night, I see a lot of the guys. I don't even do much night fishing anymore because it's just so insane with people. How many guys don't have lights on?
Yep.
Which means you've forfeited your, I should say, you're disqualified because you're not displaying your lights correctly. But they don't know they're not displaying their lights correctly.
Right.
Well, I mean, they're doing it on purpose. So they're fishermen because guys, the sportsmanship has gone so much that when somebody sees a light or doing something, there must be catching there. So I'm going to drive on top of you. And obviously in the shallow water, I mean, it's no surprise, no matter where you live, that tends to shut that whole bite down. But do you think, I mean,
social media, do you think that has affected fishing a great deal in the last decade?
Oh my God.
But
oh, are you kidding me? Crazy. Absolutely. I mean, again, you know, it's no different than all of us here. You know, you like tourism, you know, and there's certain areas and people that like say they hate everything, but yet they like the money. And again, I work, you know, in a fishing business, whether it's my guide service, the companies that I represent, doing media stuff. And so it's like, it's a cautious, you know, you got to be careful about throwing rocks in a glass house. Right. But at the same point, I think that what's hurt it is because there's the lack of sportsmanship. It's brutal. And I don't think it's a fishing thing. I think it's a culture person thing, because you can go to the grocery store and watch somebody slam the door on an 80-year-old lady because they're trying to get a cart. You know what I mean? And that's a people thing that's happened. But the amount of people that are here now that wouldn't know when a bite is happening. I mean, I get the messages. This is not guessing. People send me stuff. Hey, I just saw some pictures from my buddy. Can you tell me if the bite's good? Like, huh? Right. And you look at the number of plates of out of towners. I mean, obviously the people have figured out where to go, what to do. You know, you can search these things. And, you know, I think that things are much more accessible than when they were when we were early, as far as figuring out how to do things. Just as an example, if we didn't have the internet and all of us were going to go to Devil's Lake in North Dakota, you know, 25 years ago, that would have been a hard plan. Now, super simple. You know, and seeing when that bite is on, and you can look back and see like, hey, here's generally the windows we want to go and look at things. But no, it's changed things, no doubt. Some for the better, but a lot for not.
Ross, were you getting to the point of we're boating away a lot later into the season when you were bringing up the fall brawl, where there were only 30 boats in the central basin? Or where were you?
No, I don't think it's not a timing thing. It was more of just that. I think, and when you look at the fall, even a lot of my clients or friends, when some of the best fishing is going on, they're like, nah, man, I'm going duck hunting, or nah, I'm going deer hunting, or whatever it may be. Right. But now that there's almost literally $250,000, we got a hot call. But, now that there's $250,000 on the line, there's more people chasing it.
Yeah. And there is a lot of money on the line, and, the fall brawl has changed. Obviously in the marine side of things, we've got, marinas have to stay open later. I know because of like in this area, a lot of marinas are starting to say, if you're staying in the water after November 1, you're paying more for dockage. And because then they have to keep their hoist walls open longer because they have to winterize boats. I mean, I'm sure you run into that a little bit. They want to be in till Thanksgiving or that week after Thanksgiving. And it's become very hard. I know down in the Lorraine area, the guys that are doing the maintenance down there, they had a couple boats that actually froze this year that they're redoing motors because everybody had to stay in for that last week and they weren't winterized. They got pulled out and maybe it was blowing cold, snowy, and they weren't able to get it winterized. I mean, it's changing. Our boat, I think our boating season, even though fishing this year was 12 months, our boating season around here is pushed more into that late fall, where before us, I'm talking back in the 40s and 50s, people were out of the water by the third week of September, and they only went in on Memorial Day. I mean, you only boated 3.5.
We've
4
got
months
public launch ramps that are open year round. We have a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those are our trailer boaters, where our fishermen in the 90s all had a 20 to 30 foot boat at a dock. And we still have lots of boats at docks, but I think a lot of those are boaters now.
Right.
And we have, on any given weekend, Catawba State Park, Catawba Township Ramp, Missouri, East Harbor State Park Marina, East Harbor State Park Ramp.
I mean, State of Ohio's done an awesome job opening
we can pretty easily have 1,000 trailer boats out. In addition to we have 25,000 boat docks between Huron and Davis-Besse.
Oh, no doubt, easy. And the Linders brought that into effect 100% with like the professional walleye trail. People back then, they didn't have trailer fishing boats. You just didn't see that. You didn't see the people coming from the distance, like I said, because of the
great
not knowing, right? They didn't even know. Heck, the old Jim Foffrich, the legend, kind of taught me the game. Those guys, yeah,
Foffrich, that's great. I haven't heard that name for a long time.
Yeah, I worked for him as a kid, and the thing is like with those guys, I can remember with Gary Roach back in the day. I mean, we're talking maybe middle 90s, with me, but before that, even him taking Foffrich out there, and long story short, going, hey, why are you guys not fishing till May? And Gary's like, where can we get some minnows? And they went to Toledo, got some minnows, and pulled some jigs and stuff where nobody here, really fished super early. Rather, it was probably because, again, they didn't have their boats in, right? April 15th, 16th seems to be a date where a lot of guys are putting their stuff in. And it kind of sounds crazy now because, so much fishing goes on prior to that. And people have kind of figured out.
It's this. We know everybody's fishing. So everybody's like, I'm fishing.
Donnie, think about a half-ton or three-quarter-ton truck circa 1995 and what 21-foot boat and outboard would be on that boat and on what trailer in that era. And every single component of that has improved light years in the last 30 years. The trailers are better. The outboards, once we went to four-stroke, night and day difference. The boats, what we always called bass boats, so now they're walleye boats. They have a deep V. They have freeboard.
Yeah.
And they can run fast in a chop. Those little boats and the trailering, like nothing was up to, and you weren't in a truck that's near as nice as the trucks you and I drive now. To come here from that far away, it wouldn't have been a fun trip.
No, yeah.
With a 1989 Chevy.
Single cab 1500 or single cab F-150.
Carbureted.
See, you guys are thinking about the truck. I'm always thinking about the boats. When I saw those guys in those early PWTs in 17-foot tillers, with 75s or 90s on them, and they didn't have enough gas. Their tanks weren't big enough to even go where I go on an off, regular basis.
You're burning probably what, 9-10 an hour. And back then they were burning 30 an hour if they were running, a 150 horse Johnson V6
and all that oil.
Smell
like shit.
We wouldn't have any mosquitoes if we had all two-stroke right now. They'd be gone.
No, we sound like a bunch of old guys been doing this too long. But Don, close me up with your. If I need to hear one, so I'm going to give you a couple seconds. We may have to use the edit button on you here, but give me close me up with your story that like you would want to tell the boys when we're smoking cigars and drinking some beers. Don't go all chicken shit on me either.
No, I won't go chicken shit on you. I got to think about it. I mean, probably the roughest day I ever had in a ferry boat. Let me rephrase this. Let's back up because it goes back 24 hours. It was Halloween weekend, either 96 or 97. I don't remember. It was blowing northeast. We didn't have the weather reports we have now. We knew it was going to blow northeast, and it was Halloween Saturday night, and we were all drinking, having fun. And if I remember correctly, we were all dressed up there was a group of us from the boat line that were dressed up as the village people. Well, I happened to be the lead singer out of the group. I forget which one it was now, but as we're coming across the lake, we're coming across, and it's rough. I mean, it's bad. I had just gotten my license, and to be blatantly honest, I shouldn't have been running the boat. I mean, I knew what to do, but I wasn't ready for what was going to happen. It's kind of fly by your seat of the pants. And
you were ready for calm seas.
I mean, I had run in rough weather, but I mean, when you've got, as we call it, the three sisters coming through, and you're in 6 to 10 footers with an occasional 12, and we used to land on a stern line and come around the corner. We're coming across, and this lady is drunk, hungover, probably because we didn't go to bed at 2:30 in the morning. Had to be on the boat at 7, and she's sitting there, and all of a sudden she goes, "Hey, I'm going to get sick, and I've got an abscess on my throat, and I don't think I'm going to be able to throw up." Well, I looked at the kid with me, it was Brian McHugh, I go, "Well, you're an EMT, you're going to have to give her a tracheotomy if she can't breathe." He goes, "I'll handle it." So we pull in, and there's people puking over the sides. It's horrible. Cold, miserable, 3-day northeaster coming on, that gray, dreary, low clouds, blowing probably 35, 40 out of the northeast, gusting to maybe 45. We come in and break the bits. We come in on the stern line, and we're hanging on the line, and I can't get the boat to come around the corner. All of a sudden, the boat shudders, and we had PA systems that spoke through, and that's all I hear is broke. And I'm like, what the hell? What do you mean broke? I'm hitting buttons. They're like, the bit's broke. And so the metal bits folded together and broke. We literally had to back out. I'm saying every word in the book, trying to get out of the dock. We get around, we come back to Kelly's, and people are coming to the pilot house. What's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, look, we can't get in. It's too rough. We got to go back. Now with the weather, everybody says, oh, we're going to shut down, watch the weather in a day and a half. We didn't have that opportunity. We had probably 100 cars on the dock and another 300 to get off the island. So it's F this, F that. We got to get back to the dock. It was hairy, scary, but I made it. And, had to bring the fire truck down with the jaws of life to spread them back apart. We welded it back up, and another captain took the boat because I was definitely not taking the boat back that trip.
That's a pretty good one.
A Halloween story for my last one. How's that? So I got a call at about midnight, Halloween, I think it was 07, from a charter captain who's young but no longer with us. And he explained to me how he knew the lake like the back of his hand. Usually you're going down the wrong road when you're telling someone how good you are before you tell them what you need. And he was partying at Kelly's Island. A huge sandbar showed up just south of the casino. He said, "We are not a half a mile south of the casino, and we are high and dry, hard to ground." I said, "You can walk around this boat?" "Yeah, 29 baht." I said, "I gotta be honest with you, it's rough and it's cold, and you're hard to ground, and I don't think you are where you think you are. We're gonna come and get you at first light." "Okay, we're fine." So first light, I call him on the phone. "Where are you?" "Yeah, we're not near the casino." I said, "I knew you weren't near the casino." And they had left.
For those that are listening to this, there is no sandbars around.
No, casino's a bar. It's not a casino.
It's about 25 feet of water south of there.
Yeah. And he was heading from there to Northwest Catawba Marina. So he really needed to head from there to Mouse, take a left, run a couple miles down the shoreline, Northwest Catawba, good to go. Well, the problem was when he rounded Carpenter's Point, he turned right, and he was high and dry on Fish Point at Peely.
Oh my
He
God.
made about as many right turns as he should have made left turns. And this is a charter captain telling everyone how much he knows.
But that's got to be 10 miles.
Easy.
Well, it's probably 10 miles from Carpenter's to Northwest Catawba. The problem is you need to go west and south, and then back east. You need to make three left-hand turns in car driving speak, and instead he made 2 rights.
I'm gonna help people listening to this out a little bit. You were trying to go to Minnesota, but you ended up in Alabama.
Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy. That new one you told me about, but he screwed up. He needed Marblehead, or he needed the Perry's Monument on his starboard side, not on his port side. He screwed up.
Well, I mean, is this in the Loran Sea days, or what are?
Oh, this was 2007.
Oh, see, now this is just
almost smartphone days. Right on the verge.
Yeah, guys, come on, guys, get your GPSs going here, fellas. They got mapping. We got chips for this stuff, right?
That's another time for us to have us on, Ross.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the last thing that I want to ask you guys, because you've brought it up a couple different times, and we, obviously going all over the place, but when you said like weather, because I've had this conversation with clients or media people in the boat, I probably 50 times in the last year. And when we talk about weather now and then, I think it's windier overall. Again, I don't know statistically. I've seen a few years where they've said it's statistically the windiest, whatever. I don't believe hardly anything anymore. But when I first started guiding, I used to listen to one of those little squawk boxes, like one on the eights, like hit the thing, squelch volume, pull up antenna, $5 at Radio Shack. We're really dating ourselves. Boom, done. And I swear, aside of being annoying, because you'd get in there and you have to wait another 8 minutes and it's ADD, because you're trying to listen to the whole thing again. I swear to God, that thing was more reliable than the weather now. I mean, I'm just going back 48 hours. They missed that forecast bad. I'm looking at my phone and, wind finder, iSurf or whatever. And it's like, I'm on the lake and it's not even the direction they say it is.
I think right now with the weather, Ross, you might be correct that it's more windy. And when you say windy in that, I'm going to say in that 15 to 20 mile an hour range, I truly don't think we have the big blows and the durational blows that we used to have.
I agree.
Where we get like 3-day northeasters. I mean, we used to get those 2-3 times a year. And I remember when I was first married, we'd have to leave the boats on the island. And my ex-wife at the time, or now, you just want to be over there partying. I'm like, not real. Well, yeah, kind of, but
yeah,
but you know what I mean? We'd have to stay on the island with the boats, and it'd be 1 or 2 days. That happens once a year. That would happen 3 to 4 times a year back in the 90s. And with the weather right now, it's
unpredictable.
You listen to we used to have the May 4. The thing that used to drive me nuts is you'd listen to W2 or NOAA on your VHF. I mean, we'd always go to that back in the day. You'd always hear it playing. And it would drive me nuts. They would say they'd say today, tonight, tomorrow. What the hell is today, tonight, tomorrow? I asked a lady that at a conference one time. It was like the Upper Great Lakes Captains Convention in the mid 90s. And she goes, well, in the morning, that's from 2 a.m. until 8. And I'm like, well, that's 6 hours. I mean, I can get to point A to point B. And I think going to the sail flow and stuff like that, you can kind of pinpoint getting somewhere. Like, hey, I can get to Put in Bay here if we leave by 8 o'clock. 30 years ago, you just looked up and went in the west and go, well, there's big stratocumulus clouds up in the sky. We're going to have storms probably by 3, 4, 5 o'clock. So we better be out of there. I mean, that's how we did it. And I think that's better because it made us safer and more knowledgeable. Today, we just rely on this too much.
That's fair.
Well, my favorite event, I mean, seriously, last week, August, biggest storm here in 55 years.
Oh, yeah.
That was the biggest weather system since the famous historic storm, July 4th of 69. Between the Wednesday night, Thursday night.
It's crazy.
The wind, we had 50 knot east winds at the South Bass Light. At the same time, we had 30 knot southwest winds in Port Clinton, Ohio. That's how tight that low system was, right here over Mouse Island. And that was crazy. That was the night that Pitbull performed at Put in Bay. And we got 11 inches of rain on the islands, and the next night a bunch of tornadoes and derechos. And that was a crazy 30 hours. And that was a 50 to 100-year storm.
Did they have to cancel one of the concert days?
I can't think who it was, but yeah, the second night got canceled because the whole concert venue got flooded on Put in Bay. Yeah.
Well, we've got 2 old guards here that have given us everything from Barry Sanders to dressing is.
We are the old salts, but the problem is, I don't feel like I'm an old
salt.
So, I mean, I still like.
We're only halfway through.
Yeah, that's right. I still got a couple good years left in me.
Yeah.
Don, when I met you, I was even a young guy. How about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, Ross, that's got to go back to what, 06, 07, somewhere in there.
05.
Because you had just become a Merc Pro, right?
No, I had been with them, but yeah, Don, that's a long story, but Don helped me get some parts because we had a little recall situation and he made it happen quick for me. So still appreciative for
that. That was a crazy. We had at Takasaki, the walleye fisherman, Ted Takasaki. He had the new DTS controls that nobody else had, and it failed. And he planted his boat on the breakwall at Treasure Cove inside. He went to shift and it wasn't happy. And we had Mercury people like here the next day, and I'm like, what are they working on? And we're like, we're not allowed to watch. I'm like, okay. But yeah, there's some wild times back then.
Well, wild times to me is the captain driving the boat from the Village People, the Golden Rivet Club.
Yeah.
Those are things
I
that
am a member. I am a member. I didn't say it before. With my current wife, so I don't get in trouble.
Oh, Jake, do you want to explain to him how you don't get in trouble?
Don't bring that up.
Watch this video.
My wife says I have no filter. I mean, I think I did pretty good.
Well, you guys think of some other shenanigans that have happened, and we'll have you on here down the road. But I can't thank you enough for giving us your time. That's Jake Dunphy and Don Huntley.
Hey, thanks for having us, Ross. This was great.
Yeah.
Until the next episode, thanks for tuning in. Bigwater Fishing. If you can't find us by now, I don't know what to tell you, but bigwaterfishing.com, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all that stuff. We're on all the major download platforms, as well as YouTube, where you can see this video and you can see Don take his hat off and be somewhat bald.